Hey guys, if you've been watching my channel, you see me talk about my clients who are living all over the world, using US companies, paying no taxes. And I want to make a video to explain really in detail how this is happening and how people are doing it, where they're moving, where they're living, and how they're setting it up into more geographical and lifestyle of a sense, instead of just like open an LLC, open a bank account, close clients. Because it's more nuanced than that, and it's really important to understand local tax laws, lifestyle, like where you're going to be living, where you're going to be paying taxes, and then how you actually operate your business. So in case you're new to the channel, my name is James Baker. I'm a CPA and I do international taxes, and I basically talk about how people from other countries can open up US companies and US bank accounts and grow huge businesses without being subject to US income taxes. And it's kind of a loophole. All the laws were written back in the 50s before the internet, but it works functionally, and it works technically, and it works practically. So it's a great opportunity, and I want to let you know how it works. And it all starts from where you're paying taxes locally. Generally, you're paying income taxes where you live and where you work. So if you are a Mexican citizen and you live in Mexico and you work in Mexico, even if you have an LLC, there's some kind of potential tax in Mexico. There's some countries that have tax systems that aren't developed where they wouldn't know, or maybe it's not subject because it's foreign earnings, like it's based on where your clients are, so you're not subject to US taxes. For the most of the major developed countries like Canada, if you have an LLC, you can't just open an LLC and pay no taxes in Canada where you live. So what generally happens for most people is they leave their home country and go to some other country. Now they have the main countries. We have like Paraguay is very popular. You can get residency and pay no taxes. Panama is another one where you can get residency and pay no taxes on the money that doesn't come in, that you earn outside of Panama. Many people go to Dubai. It's getting expensive, but it's an option. And then there's other options where you can go to like countries where you don't integrate with the tax system. So I have many Canadians who are going down to Mexico, and they're basically getting permanent residency, but they're not getting a tax number. They're not ever sending money to Mexico. They're not using Mexican bank accounts. So essentially they're not seen or known by the Mexican government, and they don't pay taxes there. That's kind of the case for most of South America, where generally if you move to Ecuador, if you move to Colombia, if you move to Brazil, or even like Argentina, these countries technically would like subject you to taxes. However, when you're not using their banking system, you're not registered in their tax system, and you don't actually wire any money to Argentina because you use your US debit cards, you use ATMs, and you pull money out, and you basically live like that from US accounts, which I have many clients doing that. You don't pay tax in those countries. Now, I'm not saying that the tax laws in those countries allow you to do that, but there's many countries where that is completely feasible. And from the European side, basically east of Switzerland and Croatia and Hungary and Latvia, Lithuania, a lot of those countries have similar concepts where you can have an LLC, and as long as you don't send the money back to the country, you're not paying tax on in that country on the earnings from your LLC, especially if you're selling to US clients and you're selling to people online. So this means that if you want to break your residency in Australia and Canada, or you want to break your residency in Mexico and you want to leave your home country, you can essentially go to many different countries. And as long as you use US companies, US bank accounts, and facilitate your business through something outside of the country you're moving to, you can avoid paying taxes in that country. Now, I always recommend you get local tax advice. I'm not telling anyone to avoid or evade taxes. Well, I'm telling them to avoid taxes, not to necessarily evade them. But I'm trying to tell you what my clients are doing. Like, if you go to Bulgaria, for example, they actually allow you to have a US company, and if you have US clients and you're keeping the money in the US, you don't actually have to pay taxes on it. And it's like actually how the rules are written. So there's many countries like that where it works like that, and you can go live there and pay no taxes. So it's not just limited to like the tax-free countries like Paraguay or Panama or Dubai, or Cyprus has a lot of tax incentives, but it's not tax-free. Estonia, Georgia, there's other countries that have incentives, but they're not necessarily tax-free. But if you go to those countries and you don't participate in their tax system, in the entire tax system, most of these countries run their tax systems through their banks. In the US, while the IRS can request and get information to my bank accounts, the banks don't automatically send information to the IRS about bank accounts. So the banks in the US aren't just telling the IRS how much money people have in accounts and what they're doing with that. It's generally shared, and the only thing that's shared with the IRS is how much potential interest income or dividend income you earn from what you have in the accounts, and then even then they don't share the balances. So that's why many people from other countries like to use US banks as well, because there's a lot of general privacy because of how our system is set up. Whereas in other countries that just doesn't exist. If you have a bank account in Mexico, the government knows how much money you have in the bank account. Same in Colombia is even worse, and I have a lot of clients in Colombia where it's very difficult to do banking and run a business. I'm not picking on Canada, but I do a lot of calls with Canadians who don't want to pay tax in Canada anymore and aren't needing the high cost of living, so they leave Canada. They go to Costa Rica and they work. This week I've talked to Canadians in Costa Rica. I've talked to Canadians in Mexico and Colombia. Just yesterday I talked to Colombia, Costa Rica, Mexico. One was in Dubai, and then one was traveling in Europe. And none of these people are paying taxes on anything. They're all using US LLCs, generally, that I help them set up and I help them manage and everything. And they're not paying any US income taxes. And it's just an amazing opportunity because they legally left Canada. They legally established residency somewhere. And then as long as there's many different ways to just not pay taxes in those countries by either not staying there long enough or potentially by just not participating in their tax system. And while, yes, there's some potential risk, if you're staying in Mexico and the Mexican government says, hey, you might owe us taxes, we're going to audit you, you could just leave and go somewhere else if you ever had an issue. And they wouldn't even know about you, they wouldn't know to look for you, and all your money's in the US. So there's like putting that together is just, it's just unrealistic. So that's what most people are doing. So if you are paying too much taxes in your home country and you want to leave and pay no taxes, you're not really just limited to like the 4 or 5 major tax-free countries, like I said, like Panama, Paraguay, Dubai, and like these like commonly known tax havens or islands somewhere. You can potentially live in major places and travel between places as long as you don't establish tax residency there or participate in their tax system. Now, certain countries like the US, more aggressive. You can't just like live in the US. It's very difficult. Europe is generally easier. Like if you're from Italy and you leave Italy and you say you establish residency in, you do the Portuguese visa, or for example, maybe you do Paraguay, but you fly back to France, you could potentially travel around Europe and stay 6 months of the year, 8 months of the year in different countries, and they wouldn't even know you're there. So it depends on where you're going to be, but you know, generally, the more developed countries have more systems for catching people who are messing with the tax system. But if you're not participating in the financial system in a country at all, you're generally at a much, much lower risk of getting roped into the tax system. So if you're living in Germany, it's hard to rent an apartment if you live in some of these places like Switzerland. You can't really rent an apartment without residency, and you can't get residency without registering for taxes. But you know, if you go to Germany and you sublet an apartment, you live somewhere, they won't really know you're there if you're not participating in the financial system. So I'm just giving you guys some ideas, some food for thought, some information about how my clients are managing this. You can use a US LLC, US bank accounts, US payment processors, and grow a massive business. And as long as you're performing the services and doing the work outside the US, and if you're doing e-commerce, as long as you don't have your own warehouse and you're using fulfillment centers, you can grow a massive business without paying any taxes in the US. And depending on where you're living and working outside of the US, you could potentially pay no taxes there as well. And as I tell my Canadian clients, if you leave Canada, you can effectively double your income by cutting your tax in half. Oh, well, you can double your income by eliminating your taxes because they're paying 50%. Many of them are. And it's the same. Australia has high tax rates. Much of Europe and Spain, very high tax rates. And if you just move somewhere else, you're basically immediately doubling your income. And if you can perform your work online, you don't necessarily have to move to Dubai. Maybe you get a residency in Dubai and then travel a little bit more, but you don't have to necessarily be a digital nomad spending a month at a time in different locations. You just have to manage it intelligently and, you know, make sure you have all the tools you need to grow your business. So if you have any questions about this, you want to talk to me about your specific scenario, you can schedule a call with me or my team on the calendar link at jamesbakercpa.com/schedule. And I have more videos about this coming out. So subscribe and stay tuned. And if you have any questions about your specific case, comment below, and I'd love to help out. Okay, so thanks for being here. I'll see you on the next one.